Welcome to Bed Crime Stories podcast. I'm your host, T. If you like all things true crime, if you like it delivered in a peaceful, tranquil manner, if you like it clear and concise without drama, then I highly recommend you subscribe. And if you like what you hear, please smash the like button. It's a free way you can help. And now, without further ado, let's dig in. Stephan Sterns' parents, Chris and Debbie, have finally spoken out. They had a 2-hour conversation with Lauren and Dr. John of Hidden True Crime. One of the first things they wanted to say is that they now believe that Stefan was the sole perpetrator of the crime against Maddie. I think what they were specifically referring to was the unaliving of Maddie. Debbie said at first she didn't believe that Stefan could have done this, but now they've both seen enough evidence that they believe he was the sole perpetrator of her unaliving. Chris and Debbie still think that Jenn could have been involved in some criminal enterprise. They're wondering how these people obtained money for things. They are definitely no fan of Jenn Soto's. They say that Stefan manipulated her, but she also manipulated him. And you may recall that when Stefan and Jenn and Maddie would visit the Sterns at their home in Northport, at first, Maddie, Jenn, and Stefan were planning to sleep in Stefan's bedroom, but Debbie said absolutely not. It's inappropriate. Maddie will sleep with me in my bedroom. I have a big bed, it's comfortable, and she should be here rather than on the floor in Stefan's room. I guess she was assuming that Maddie would be on the floor. We know, of course, that Maddie slept with Jenn and Stefan in the bed. Debbie and Chris do not share the same bedroom. They say they both snore, and so at this point in life, they prefer getting a good night's rest to sharing the same bedroom and the same bed. I get that. I understand it. Anyone who's ever tried to sleep with somebody who snores knows what I'm talking about. Sounds like snoring runs in the family. We've heard that Stefan has sleep apnea, which, by the way, if somebody does snore, they need to be checked for sleep apnea, and they should get a sleep apnea machine, because every time you snore, you're preventing oxygen from getting to your brain. And over time, from what I've read, this can lead to dementia. Just a little health tip there. None of us wants to get dementia. Now, as Chris and Debbie spoke about Stefan, they were using the past tense. To me, it's pretty evident that they are grieving their son. No, he's not dead. He's still alive. But they know he's going to be in prison for the rest of his life, and that would be the best case scenario. They also know that he is at risk in jail and prison of being unalived by the other prisoners because of the nature of his crimes, committing SA against a child. They said that they haven't spoken to him in 3 weeks and that he is in solitary confinement at the moment. They are being denied access to him. They can't call him. They can't speak to him. And when Chris tried to get a report on how he's doing, it sounds like they didn't give them any information. And these are parents who are saying that he's still our son. We know what he did, but no matter what he did, we will always give him unconditional love. And I think any parent who has a child who has committed a crime knows what they're saying. You don't stop loving your child, even if they committed a brutal act like what was done to Maddie. I think back to Ted Bundy and his mother. She supported him until the end. She never believed he was capable of the crimes. Debbie and Chris are pretty angry with the overall treatment that they've received in the true crime world. They're mad that people are questioning them for buying their son books and hard candy. They're asking what parent wouldn't do this for their child. The Sterns also disclosed that law enforcement told them that it's going to be many years before this goes to trial. And like I said earlier, they're saying, well, we could lose him at any point. I mean, somebody might take a shot at him in the jail. During their discussion on hidden true crime, Debbie and Chris also were able to put to rest some myths about their son. One of them is that Stefan did not graduate late from high school. He graduated at age 17. Debbie began homeschooling him because it was a real problem trying to get him out of bed and to do his homework. And apparently the principal advised her, you might want to think of homeschooling him, which basically was giving him access to a virtual online high school. So in that case, he was able to take classes that began at 10 a.m., which Debbie said worked a lot better for Stefan. And also for her, apparently she's a night owl. She stays up late. She has insomnia, just like Stefan. So she said the virtual school actually worked better for Stefan and for her. And he was able to graduate. And he was also able to go to prom. He still had access to those things. They described him as having maybe 4 to 5 friends that he was close with. And unfortunately, a lot of these kids had drinking and drug problems. One of Stefan's friends actually took the Big H. I call it the Big H. It's a very dangerous illicit substance, and he took too much of it and he died, if you know what I'm saying. Debbie said that Stefan has a near genius IQ. In school, he excelled in English and history. Math, not so much, but she did get him a tutor, I guess. I can relate to the problems with math. Math has been my nemesis since probably 8th grade, 9th grade. My parents should have gotten me a tutor. Now, there is a story that we already knew about, and that is that when Stefan was a little kid, a little boy, he was actually run over by a man driving a Toyota truck. Apparently, Stefan and a friend were playing in a parking lot, and this man rolled over Stefan. Stefan kind of went down into a hole. I think Debbie mentioned some mud being there. And so the guy hit the back of Stefan's head, and then he rolled over the front of Stefan's head as well. And this led to a traumatic brain injury. And the doctors told the Sterns that this may change Stefan's personality. And they said it totally changed his personality. He went from being an energetic kid who ran around the house, who would run up to the neighbors' doors and looking for friends to play with, to somebody who was much more solitary, somebody who had separation anxiety. My brother had a concussion, and they told my parents the same thing. This could change his personality. And what happened to him was he lost his sense of smell. The same thing happened to Michael Hutchins, I think his name is, from In Excess. He had a traumatic brain injury. He lost his sense of smell, and it was a huge loss to him. It led to severe depression, because he was somebody who was into food and wine. Losing your sense of smell can take away some of life's greatest pleasures. You can't taste your food, you can't smell your food. What I'm trying to say is that the guy from In Excess unalived himself, and I think part of the reason that happened could be tied back to the traumatic brain injury. Another trauma that Stefan suffered through was with a truck driver who drove past him and some of his friends, and the truck driver made a lewd comment, and Stefan and his buddies, and I think there were some girls there too, gave the driver the bird, and the guy turned the truck around, parked it, got out, and apparently, according to Chris Sterns, he was huge, and the person he targeted was Stefan, and apparently the guy put his hands on his neck. And Stefan, according to Chris, had a pocket knife in his pocket. Yeah, okay. Well, he pulled it out, and according to Chris, it was an act of self-defense. So, per the Sterns, Stefan took that out and jabbed the man in his chest, barely missing his heart. But apparently Stefan was never charged, but the driver of the truck was. So this is their side of that story. I always say there are at least two sides to every story, sometimes more. So of course the Sterns want to humanize Stefan. They want to portray him in the best light, even though they are admitting that he committed this act against Maddie. And when he was a teenager, apparently Stefan was robbed with somebody holding a weapon. This, of course, further traumatized Stefan and led to more PTSD. It doesn't sound like they got him counseling when he was a child, but they said he's been in counseling for many years. I think these traumas are important because they may help explain what turned Stephan Sterns into an essayer, into a voyeur, into somebody who unalived a child. This is not to excuse him in any way, it's just to try to understand what created this person that a lot of us see as a monster. They did say, however, that he was never essayed as a child. There was never any DV in the household. They portrayed their home life as very loving, very supportive of Stefan. I don't know if you know it, but Stefan has an older brother, and he apparently is well-adjusted and off living his life. Debbie said she used to take Stefan fishing. She's kind of an outdoors type of person. We know that she loves poodles. Apparently at some point, Stefan even had his own horse. He had to go out there and feed the horse and, shovel the manure. Debbie portrayed him as somebody who would find an injured animal and bring it home for nurturing. And in fact, Jenn Soto's dog Sailor belonged to Chris Sterns' sister, who came down with dementia and had to move into assisted living. And Stefan brought the dog home for care. The dog was dirty, it smelled, so he brought it home, they washed it, and it ended up in Jenn Soto's household. Stefan also had some sort of severe kidney problem at some point, and he had to have surgery. Apparently it was very painful. I'm wondering if that's why his stomach looked kind of dimpled, because when I saw him in the jail when they made him take his shirt off, it almost looked like he had 3 belly buttons. There were like 3 dents in his stomach, and I'm wondering if one of those is from this surgery. Stefan also had some other medical issues that led to him being rejected for the military, and when that happened, it caused him some depression as well as anger. Sounds like he felt like he wasn't worthy, and his dad Chris said that Stefan would date people who maybe were works in progress, who needed help, and that he would tend not to go for somebody who was maybe smarter than he was. I think that was a little bit of a jab at Jenn Soto. Debbie made it clear that she and Chris really loved Maddie. They liked Maddie. They said she was a really bubbly, cheery child. And that one time when she was over at their house and Stefan was sitting on the sofa, Maddie went over and sat on the arm of the sofa and put her arm around Stefan and told him that she loved him. I keep saying that I think that Maddie had Stockholm syndrome. She didn't realize, this had happened from such a young age, and she was groomed at like age 8. I don't think she had a chance to realize that what he was doing to her was SA. And I think that she had some strange bond with him, not really knowing what all this was. She was confused, I'm sure. As a girl whose father was living in another state, who wasn't there on a regular basis, I am sure that she longed for a father figure. And here comes Stephan Sterns, and he's playing that role on the one hand, but then he's doing this other stuff on the other side, and I'm sure it was very mixed up for Maddie. Debbie said she did have a conversation with Jenn and Stefan, trying to tell them that it was inappropriate for Maddie to be sleeping in the same bed with them. Jenn would say, if she's sleeping in her own bed, she'll just come into my bedroom in the middle of the night, so there's nothing we can do about it. And Debbie was like, well, put a lock on your door and lock it. Lock Maddie out. As a parent, I'm pretty sure Debbie was concerned that Stefan could be accused of stuff. I'm sure she was uncomfortable with this and she wanted to protect Stefan. Jenn could turn around at any time and call the police and say, he's doing this and you need to charge him. Now, here was something really shocking that the Sterns said. They related that Stefan told them that on Sunday night or Monday morning when Maddie died, he supposedly went outside to blow off some steam, and when he came back in and he checked on Maddie, she was cold. So he was making it sound like she died for some other reason, and he just happened to find her and she was cold. Of course, we know from the autopsy report that Stefan used his hands on her neck. By the way, the parents know that that story is not true. They know that it's another one of Stefan's lies. You know, he started lying to them at a certain point in life and he just never stopped lying. He has stolen money from them. He stole Debbie's deceased father's Rolex. So he probably pawned that, and that may be where he got some of his money. The Sterns were interested in talking to Dr. John Matthias because they want to better understand Stefan, and they're hoping to get answers as to why he never really grew up, how he never evolved into a self-supporting adult. Chris Sterns said they would get him to such a point, but he would never make that push over to adulthood. And I think any parent who has a child who's had trouble with the law, maybe trouble with addiction, they can understand this because sometimes you can raise your children really well. You can be the most loving parent, you can be a parent who doesn't have trouble with alcohol or drugs and still have a child who finds their way into that stuff. And no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, no matter if you get them into a rehab, they still never break the addiction. I will say that Debbie Sterns comes off a little more angry than Chris. She seems to be a bit of a hothead. She's more defensive, and unfortunately for them, because of the crimes that their son has committed, they've become the targets of people making calls to them, threatening them, blaming them for Stefan's actions. I will admit that I have seen them as enablers. I've seen them as parents who maybe coddled an adult who really should have been sort of cast out and forced to swim on his own. But I've also said that one of the reasons they might have done that is because they know he had a traumatic brain injury as a child that could affect his brain and his personality. I would imagine that if you have a child who had a traumatic brain injury, you're always going to wonder if it's because of that injury that your child is the way they are now. And so you're probably going to offer them help into adulthood more than a parent who has a child who never had a traumatic brain injury. You know what I'm saying? What they should do is, if something does happen to Stefan, they should maybe donate his brain to science so it can be studied. By the way, Chris apologized for bringing up that graphic essay photo that he claimed Jenn had showed him. He's now admitting that Jenn described it in such graphic detail that he really pictured it in his brain, to the point where he thought he'd actually seen such a photo. He's now admitting that he did not see that photo. And Debbie Sterns said that Stefan was never essayed as a child. She never gave him magazines like Hustler. They were like, no, that never was in our house. I don't know why his friend said that. I believe a friend of his said that on Gray Hughes. Chris and Debbie said that Stefan's lying really began in high school, but they also said that Stefan never became an alcoholic. He was never a drug addict, apparently. And they said that they never abused those things in their home either. Apparently, the only thing Stefan ever did was one day when he was in high school, they came home and they found him pretty much inebriated, and it turned out that he had gotten into their alcohol and he tasted everything they had. After that, they got rid of all of it. Those are the highlights that I took away from this conversation. If you want to watch the entire interview, I'll leave a link to it in the description. If you enjoyed this and you learned something from it, please smash the like button. It would also appeal to you guys to consider a membership. I only charge $1.99 a month. That is so much less than even one drink from your favorite coffee establishment. I'm just saying. And I'll see you next time on Bed Crime Stories. Night night. I'm going to bed. I'm tired.
But yeah, people trying to scare you. Wow.
Yes. We have people saying that they're going to come down here. We have people saying that what they would like to see happen to me. And then have graphic descriptions of what they want to see happen to Stefan. Male and females do this. It's not that. And they can get to us no matter where, because every time we do something like change our phone number, then they dox us again on YouTube and give us the new phone numbers. So, I mean, how many times do you have to change your phone number in your business cards?
Gosh.
What do we have to do? Do we have to live in self-confinement all the time? Afraid to even go to the grocery store because somebody might walk up to me in a parking lot and accost me? Is somebody following us as we go around and we don't know? Cars parked around. We don't know if somebody's hiding in them watching us. Chris walked out the other day and there was a person out front with a cell phone taking pictures of our house. So, said he was, what did he say he was?
He was taking some B-roll for somebody.
Where B-roll is, taking B-roll for a television show, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, we're not the story. We're not the face of this. Like I said, we're just as shocked by all of this. And we know as much as the public knows, no more and no less, whatever's out there. And if we've missed something in some of these reports, well, again, as I said, we've seen enough evidence to convince ourselves that Stefan did this and was involved. We're not denying that.
I'll admit that I didn't believe it at first. I didn't. Now I do. And I'm not making excuses for him. But as for me, the more people screw with us and the more lies they say, the more angry I get at them. Because why? What gives them the right? They have no skin in the game. They don't know any of us. They don't know anything about us.